Good afternoon again, everybody. Welcome to this information session hosted today by our colleagues and friends from the United States Embassy with respect to the study and work program in the United States. We want to particularly welcome our colleagues from the U.S. Embassy on the platform. Please give them a round of applause. And welcome to all of you who have taken the time to be here, to be informed, and to be empowered by information in terms of how the program operates. As you all know, about 20 to 25% of our student population on a yearly basis, except during the COVID years, travel to the United States every year on this structured study and travel program facilitated by the partnership between this campus, MonaMedia, and the United States Embassy. It is a very, very important program for you and certainly for us, because we are all aware of the challenges that we all face, you as students and we as administration, in terms of funding your education. I know it is not easy. Ideally, you would have wanted just to get up, study, do your exams without having to worry about how your education is financed. Unfortunately, most of the households that we come from are not so endowed with financing, with resources to be able to give you that opportunity. And so many of you in between studying have to think about how you will fund your exam. And this program has helped, as I said, 20 to 25% of our students who have gone to the United States as soon as exams are finished in about early May and come back just before orientation. In fact, some of you even come back a little later and over a 4-month period earn enough to be able to pay your school fees. That is important for you, and that is what has enabled many of you and your colleagues past who have gone on before you to finance their education. And it's also important for us because, believe you me, students, we take no pleasure when you come to us 5 minutes to 9 in the morning of an exam saying that you are black and you can't get in, and you know the frustration and the agitation that you face. So we consider this a very important program, and that is why we work closely with the Embassy of the United States to make sure that you are armed with all the necessary information you need, and we work with everybody involved to ensure that you go, come back safely, come back with money, pay your fees, so that we don't have the issues on campus. So today we are happy again to welcome our colleagues from the United States Embassy. They are here to share with you information that you will need to complete this process, and we are happy that they have come to the campus to collaborate with us, and we treasure this partnership very much. So give them another round of applause and welcome everybody again. Thank you very much. Sorry if I have to run off, I have another meeting, but I'm sure that you'll be well taken care of by the team, the Deputy Registrar, and our friends here from the United States. Thank you all very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nikisha, and I'm a Vice Counsel at the U.S. Embassy. Thank you all for being here. We're very happy to be here with you all. How many of you all have gone on summer work travel? Okay, so we have a few people. Did you enjoy your experience? I see smiles. That's good to hear. I participated in 2 exchange programs, one in Brazil and one in Ghana, and they irrevocably changed my life. So we understand how important these exchanges are, and we're here to facilitate that. So let us begin. And I should know I'm here with my lovely colleagues. They'll introduce themselves as they come up. So what is summer work travel? It is an opportunity for students to travel to the U.S., to experience U.S. culture, and to make money that you can then use to fund your education. And in this presentation, we'll specifically discuss the eligibility requirements, the types of jobs you can do, how long you can work in the U.S., how you apply for the program, and how you can ensure your safety while working in the U.S. So in order to qualify, you must be a full-time student at a post-secondary academic institution, and you must also plan to continue your studies. You must maintain a full course load, and for our standards, that is a minimum of 4 courses or 12 credit hours. There is no age limit to participate in this program. We understand that there are non-traditional students, and there's also no limit on the number of times you can participate. So you can participate as an undergraduate student, graduate student, postgrad. You all speak English, so that's not a challenge for you, but that is a requirement because you will be interacting with U.S. citizens. And for final year students, you may not be taking a full course load. So if you're graduating, that is okay as long as you apply for the program while you're still completing your final year of study, and you have to go on the program before or within 1 year of the termination of your educational program. Okay. Oh, okay. So my colleague Sean will then will discuss the process. It starts with you. Once you make the decision to apply or to participate in the program, you will then connect with the university registrar, an agent or coordinator that will connect you with the U.S. sponsor, who will then peer you or give you a list of potential job opportunities in the U.S. From there, you will be issued a DS 2019 form that you will need to bring to your interview. And then once your visa is approved, you make your way to the U.S. To work and experience U.S. culture. So what is a U.S. sponsor? My colleague Sean will explain.
Good afternoon. Sean McKeating, the Fraud Prevention Manager. Sponsors are a really important part of the program, and I will say overall, we encourage people, if they're going on a tourist visa, Disney, visit relatives, whatever, you should just go ahead and use your own skills, fill out your own application, make your own appointment, and go on through. It's not complicated. You probably don't need a travel agent to get ready for that 2-week trip to visit relatives in New York, for example. This is different. This whole J1 summer work and travel thing, it's a complicated thing. And so a U.S. sponsor is an important part of the whole overall thing. So you can see here, sponsors have certain roles. The State Department vets them. There's a particular list that tells you who is not a sponsor. That address there, that j1visa.state.gov, that's really important. That's really important. We'll talk a little bit more about the sort of where can fraud and bad motives kind of get into this program. This is one of those places. This is one of those places where people will act like they are an official sponsor and have a website that looks a whole lot like the official sponsor's website, and you find out only later after you've sent money along, they were never really there, you're never going to get your form, and it's too late to reapply. So that j1visa.state.gov, really, really important so that you know what it is and who it is that you're working with. But in general, the State Department designates U.S. government, academic, and private sector entities to conduct educational and cultural exchange programs. To participate in that program, foreign nationals have to be sponsored by one of those designated sponsors. They are your visa sponsor. That's sort of their role in the program. They are responsible for screening and selecting the eligible foreign nationals, that's you guys, for participation, and also supporting and monitoring your stay while you're there. Are you being mistreated? Are you getting the right food, clothing, housed, things like that. They are there to make sure that none of that goes wrong. Again, there is a list of these folks, and you really need to make sure when you're dealing with them that you're dealing with an official agency. But these visa sponsors, they sort of have different tiers or levels of service. One is a basic package where you pretty much already know where you're going to go. And so you are just looking for someone to make all the pieces match, not necessarily find you the thing. For those, they're just going to put together the paperwork, they're going to make sure that the job and housing exist, they're going to schedule your interview for you, and they'll provide travel insurance and contacts in the U.S. that will help in the event of an emergency. That's what a sponsor is supposed to do. If you need someone to find you work, find that opportunity. They will also do that, usually at a slightly higher fee charged by the recruiter or the agent here in Jamaica, but that's their role. So, how does it work? So the agency coordinator helps you find the job, helps you find the housing, might help you with other logistics depending on the package. Sometimes they help you arrange for travel, insurance, things like that. You do not have to, although we highly recommend, you do not have to work with an MLSS registered recruiter here in Jamaica. You can actually work directly. It is legal to work directly with a designated sponsor. Our role at the embassy is to make sure all the paperwork's been filled out right and the qualifications are present. If you do that by working directly with a sponsor instead of working with a local recruiter, that is okay. You just run a little bit more risk in having something unexpected occur because you don't have that sort of double insurance of people looking out for you and what's going on. When it comes to recruiters, when it comes to the visa sponsors, how much they charge, the level of service they provide, and how reliable and how much history they are, these are all things that you as an informed consumer should educate yourself about, right? It's a competitive marketplace. Some people for the same service as Company A is offering, Company B might offer it for 25% less. Is that 25% less really a savings to you, or is Company B maybe not as well established and you need to worry about your safety and things? You need to make sure that you know and are comfortable with the people that you are working with for this program, because it is 4.5 months of your life in a whole nother place, and you want to make sure you take care of those things the right way.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carrie Ann. So I will be covering what jobs that you can actually do while you're working on the program. So very importantly, it must be seasonal and focus on interacting with people, Americans, right? So jobs can be all over the country, usually in parks, entertainment parks, for example, Six Flags, pool guards, restaurants, hotels, for example, etc. And of course, we've been saying it a lot, must speak English. All right, so now we're on to the jobs that you can't do, right? So for instance, you're not allowed to work where you're packing fishes. No night shifts from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. No jobs where you cannot interact with the Americans. No traveling fairs. Very importantly, no adult industries, no casinos, no jobs at beauty salons, massage parlors, piercing, tattoos, etc. No jobs driving cars, pedicabs, Uber, guiding boats, no jobs in someone's private home, and no sales positions that require participants to purchase inventory that they must sell in order to support themselves. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Keisha Murray. Now, how do you apply for your J1 visa? You must first try to get your DS 2019. If you don't know, that's going to delay the process. Complete your application, which is a DS 160 form online, and pay your fee as well there. schedule and attend your visa interview, or this year we're doing something totally new. My colleague will tell you more about that, where you are able to renew your J1 visas through courier. You don't have to appear in person. Receive your visa if all goes well, book your travel, and enjoy your time in the US. Right? How long can I stay? Well, these are the questions you usually ask. How long are you able to stay in the US? Now, on your DS 2019, there are the start date and the end date. So you need to focus on that. You are given 30 days prior to the start date to enter the US and 30 days after the end date to leave the US. However, you know when your program starts, so it's best for you to come back before that date. Okay? All right, I'm going to turn over to my colleague. She'll give you more information on this program.
All right, so Keisha already touched on some of the important components for applying and preparing for the interview. So I just want to highlight the things that you need to bring with you on the day that you interview for your visa. So of course you need to have a valid passport. You need to submit your DS-160, that is the online application, and so you'll bring that confirmation page in with you when you come in. We also need passport size photos taken within the last 6 months. Your DS 2019, again, that is what that's what's issued to you once you've been connected with a U.S. sponsor in that position. And then you'll need to bring some proof that you are a full-time student. Typically, students will bring in the transcript. If your transcript does not display your current course load, be prepared to maybe talk about that or also have that status letter with you. Your service fee that Keisha talks about, you need to pay that and bring in that receipt as proof of payment. And at this time, you do not need to bring in your insurance coverage letter, but having that with you, having that insurance is also important, right? And so how can you prepare for your interview? This isn't we're not here to trick you or, to make your life miserable or difficult. At the time of the interview, we are just trying to assess your qualifications for the program. Are you a full-time student? Do you have a job? And so those are the types of questions that we'll ask you. And so be prepared to answer those questions. You should know where you're going in the U.S. You should know what you're going to be doing there. And more importantly, be honest and forthcoming. We understand that you're nervous, but you have to answer the question. Sometimes folks get too nervous and don't answer. So just answer the questions. We're not here to trick you up. We just want to know what you're going to do and where you're going to be doing that work, okay? Now, as Keisha mentioned, this year we are now allowing J1 renewals or applicants who are renewing their visas to submit their documentation via interview waiver. So if you did participate in the program last year, you don't have to come in for an interview. So when you are applying for the visa, the scheduling website will prompt eligible applicants to submit their documents through the courier service. Make sure that you have that DS 2019 attached to your passport, as well as your service receipt and proof or evidence of your status as a student. So some of the common questions that students ask is, what if you failed an exam, or what if you have a GPA below 2.0? So those are things that we will ask about. That does not disqualify you from participating in the program. We understand life happens. You may have had a death in the family, or you struggled through, mathematics, econ. We get it. So just be prepared to explain. Not giving us that context is going to hurt you, so just be prepared to explain why you didn't do so well. If you have relatives filing for you, that is okay, as long as you can, demonstrate that you are going to return to Jamaica after the end of your J1 summer work travel trip. That's completely fine. All right. Now moving on to my colleague Sean, he will discuss some fraud concerns and ways that you can avoid committing fraud and avoid being defrauded while in the U.S.
Okay, so before we get into the specific fraud stuff, here's a common question. I'm in the U.S., I'm in the dates for my program, and I'm working at an amusement park in Cincinnati, Ohio. I have relatives in Toronto, and they want me to come up for a weekend and come back down during the dates of my program. Can I do that with my J1 summer work and travel visa? The answer to that is yes. Yes. Make sure you take your DS 2019 with you and your passport, because when you try to get back in the U.S., they're going to want to know, how are you doing so? Are you a tourist? What's going on? You explain, I still have 4 weeks left in my summer work and travel program at this place, and here's my DS 2019. In you go. But as one of my colleagues said, you have to return to Jamaica, or at least leave the United States, within 30 days after the program close date. Could you do it then? You know, what if you're busy at the amusement park and you tell your relatives in Canada, I can't do it till after Labor Day. That's when things finally slow down. Then I'll come see you. No. No. If you exit the United States and attempt to enter after the closing date of your program, which will be no later than September 8th this year, they won't let you in because you don't have the status. A visa is good for an application to enter. You can enter on a visa that's almost expired and stay in the United States after that date in some circumstances, but you can't leave and then try to come back in. That expiration date, that program close date, that's the last date you can ask to come into the US, okay? So this sometimes comes up. We want to make sure that we've answered that question. Now, with regards to fraud prevention, usually my job with regards to college students is someone who is interviewing an applicant for an F visa, someone who wants to go study in the United States. They're going to some really expensive school. The piece of paper says you need 50,000 US dollars in support, and they say, my uncle who owns a business is going to support me. And so an officer might say, hey, fraud prevention unit, can you please check and call that sponsor? Can you please ask the bank of the place where that sponsor showed you that account statement if those things are true? That's the kind of stuff we usually do. And we do that for J1 summer work and travel too, but even more importantly for you guys, the safety of the system, the effectiveness of the system, and you guys and your experience inside the summer work and travel program is part of my job as the fraud prevention manager. So, here's the first thing that you're going to see. You're going to get one of these. Who here has done, I'm sorry, raise your hands again, who done summer work and travel before? Please, please tell me that at some point during your interactions with the embassy, you got that pamphlet, the one that's on the screen right now. These are your rights. People who go to the United States to work are entitled to the same protections as anyone else under US labor law. Sometimes the people who run our programs aren't really clear on that, right? Sometimes you have to act to protect yourself. That pamphlet right there is the one that tells you what are your rights and how do you make a complaint if things aren't going well. You have the right to be paid fairly, to be free from discrimination, sexual harassment, exploitation, to have a healthy and safe workplace, to request help if you need it from a union, an immigrant, or labor rights groups. My understanding is the Jamaican government actually has sort of ombudsman in the United States to make sure if you're having problems, you have a friendly face to go to say this is how it's going bad at the job and be heard. That's your right. But what if besides all that, you're still in an abusive situation? You can leave. You can leave. There is no requirement for the J1 summer work and travel visa for you to continue to sit in a place that is not following US labor law. That pamphlet is important. Make sure you keep it next to your passport at all times when you're in the US. If you lose it, go to travel.state.gov and download it again. It is your Bill of Rights when you're in the US. So here you go. This might be an example of something you might run into. This is where one of our summer work and travel participants was asked to stay in 2012. We don't want that to happen. I have a more recent case. Just last year, there was a summer work and travel program regarding an Alaskan fishery way up north, way in the cold spot. And when the people who were doing the hiring talked to the visa sponsor, like the guys I talked about before, it was great food, nice accommodations, low work, cultural exchange opportunities with the local population. But in the end, it was a place that looked like that, or worse, a cargo container essentially, way up north, with a little heat, bad food, and a lot of back-breaking work. And so, a complaint was made, the complaint was listened to, and the person was transferred from that job by their visa sponsor to another job that was more in keeping with what the program is supposed to be all about. That was last year. This is not a, oh, way back when this happened. It might happen this year. We need to know about it. So it's important we know the rules. The program dates for this year. All right, so back in September of last year, our colleagues in Washington asked, will you please find out when all of the colleges are leaving or stopping classes for spring semester and when they're beginning classes for fall semester. And so we looked at the academic calendars that were placed online, and based on that information, we said, well, it's from April 20th to September 1st. And that's still what's on that J1 visa website. But what we heard from a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, is, hey, that's too soon. That brings our kids home before that Labor Day weekend. And that Labor Day weekend is really important to a lot of these employers. So for those kids, we let them come back a little later. On that basis, we talked to our Washington colleagues, and the actual dates, program dates for Jamaica, are 20 April to 8 September. Now, you can make sure that your recruiting agent, you can make sure that your visa sponsor, you can make sure that the employer know that those are the actual dates, right? Just say, hey, look, the U.S. Embassy says it's 8 September. When they call our colleagues in Washington to make sure that's true, they'll know it's true. It's just taking a little while for the website to update, and I know every day is important. Some people, in fact, have been told, we'll find someone else because you won't be here for Labor Day weekend. If you hear something along those lines, when you're applying for your own program, let them know. No, the actual end date for Jamaica this year is September the 8th. All right? So those are all things to help protect you. Here are some things that we ask in return. Observe the law. You are subject to all U.S. laws while you're in the U.S., just like I'm subject to Jamaican law while I'm here in Jamaica. If you break a law, you can be deported, prevented from getting another U.S. visa, or even go to jail, kind of depending on what happens. The drinking age in the United States is 21. 21. Never, never, for your own safety and also for other people on the road and your continued participation in the program, never drink and drive. Now, there are people who don't have the right motivations for things, who find it very useful to make contact with Jamaicans that are in the United States. They might ask you to open a bank account in their name at Citibank, Miami, or whatever. They might ask you to accept a wire transfer. They might ask you to take a package, like, a small little box. Would you just take this package with you? Won't put you over the limit for weight for the airline. Go ahead. No. No. No money, no people, no stuff, nothing. It's you and your things. Nothing from anybody you don't know. All right? It's really important. And in the U.S., it's a little bit of a different number. 911 is the number to call for emergencies. That goes to a centralized emergency response center, and based on what you tell them, they will route you to the police, fire, ambulance, whatever it is that you need. This is very, very important. And this has happened a lot. Someone will say, oh, you're my employee now. I need to hold on to your documents for you, just in case anybody comes around and asks. Never, never. Your passport and your Wilberforce pamphlet and your DS 2019, they are gold. They are like your ticket. You need to hold on to them. You give them to nobody for nothing, and if anybody asks for it, you call one of those numbers. You call the number in the Wilberforce pamphlet, you call the local people who were set up to help Jamaican workers, and you let them know. This is no good, and no good ever comes from giving somebody else your passport. All right. A little bit more about what our applicants can do to get sort of in the bad book, if you know what I mean. We have access to a lot of systems, and we have access to a lot of information. So if one of our colleagues who's interviewing on the line sees that a fraudulent transcript, let's say you had to withdraw because of some family emergency, but you think it might be bad to say that you withdrawn, so you take a legitimate transcript and you add the spring classes, not ones that you're really taking, but something that's plausible, that the consular officer can look at and say, oh good, they're still a full-time student. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. So if you're going to falsify the signatures of anybody here at the school, forging seals, any fake documents, bump up your GPA beyond what it is, say that you're attending classes that you're not, these will really, really turn out badly for you, not only this time, but in the future. Also, you need to check and see that the recruiter that you're working with, and again, we recommend you do work with an MLSS registered recruiter, you need to make sure they're licensed. Sometimes you're going to hear about programs that seem too good to be true. It happens for J1 summer work and travel. It happens for all our work visa categories. For example, someone might say, you don't even have to interview. I'm going to give you a letter. You're going to go on the cruise ship and work. We're just going to send you a letter. You pay me X thousand JMD and off we go. No, if it seems too good to be true, it is. It is. Be careful out there. All right. Here again, something that we have seen just here recently are people making imposter websites. So, when you are dealing with getting real information, it's important that you make sure you are on the U.S. Embassy Kingston, Jamaica site. And you know it's that site because it ends with .gov. That's our domain as a government entity. Likewise, that J1 website, j1visa.state.gov. These are important. There is one website that's going to be important to you that is .com. That's how you schedule your visa. That's like just a scheduling program. But if you're talking about who has the information that I need to make sure I'm protecting myself, and I really know who I'm dealing with, and I really know what the program requires, .gov is the way to go. Again, like a couple of weeks ago, I had to inform our Washington colleagues about a visa sponsor that was fake, that had a website that was only different from the real one by a couple of letters, and was better spelled, better laid out, and was more functional than the real website of the actual visa sponsor. It's so easy to go down one of these channels into a place where you pay money and you don't get what you paid for. Please be careful. Please make sure that j1visa.state.gov and the Jamaican Embassy, or sorry, the Kingston Embassy website are the ones that you look to for information. It's really, really important that your DS-160 application be true and correct. Got to have the right telephone number, email addresses, yours, not the program sponsor, emergency contact people, and the sponsor in the United States. Got to have all of that. If you work with an agency, they're going to ask you to fill out one of those forms. And you might think, well, if I gave them the information, whatever they put on it, it's kind of their responsibility, but no. No, you are responsible for the accuracy of your DS-160 application. If you come to the embassy and somebody says, is this true? And you say, oh no, why did they put that? Make sure it's accurate. Make sure it's accurate because you are responsible for the information that's on there. So, what if you end up, either by accident or maybe even on purpose, presenting us a fraudulent document? Well, at the very least, it's going to lead to no program this year. In most cases, it will also lead to a lifetime ineligibility to ever go to the U.S. again on a visa. And in some cases, depending on what it is that you presented, it could end up being a criminal prosecution under U.S. or Jamaican law for visa fraud. That's not where you want to go. That's not where you get it. We do 7,000 to 7,500 of these a year, and almost everybody does it right, and almost everybody has a good program, and almost everybody comes back with great experiences and money for class, and away we go. We want to watch out, and it's my job to watch out not only for you to make sure you're not taken advantage of, but also to protect the system so that people know that summer work and travel is legitimate and should be a welcoming partner for you guys to go to the U.S. and for U.S. employers to have the people that they need to get through the summer. Don't break the law when you're in the U.S. Now, on the Wilberforce pamphlet, there you go. You have, if your rights have been violated and you report it, it cannot and will not be used against you. There is no note in next year's summer work and travel application that says, oh, this person had a hard time last year with their employer. You should think about maybe no. No one will ever suffer a detriment from the U.S. government for reporting things to the U.S. government that aren't going right. You are encouraged to do so. It's very, very important. Also, make sure that you return timely, because if you did it in freshman year, you're probably going to want to do it in sophomore and junior year too, right? Make sure that the first time goes well, so that the next time you don't even have to go to the embassy anymore. That's great. Send in the documents and off you go. No interview, no, standpipe, waiting in line, all that stuff. Great. Let's do that. Make sure that you make that option available for yourself by doing everything right the first time you go. All right. We are now open for your questions. I can't answer a question about my application or this particular program or that particular sponsor or recruiter, but if you have a question in general about how the program works, any kind of advice, we are certainly open and available for those questions. I think I see a microphone. I'm not sure if it's turned on, but however you guys want to organize the questions, I'll call my colleagues up and we'll answer them as the questions come in. Go ahead.
Okay, so I have two questions. First question is, when will the embassy be closing their application time period for students that time? So we won't close the application period. So you still have until, I believe. So essentially, your program cannot exceed 4 months, but if you're not able to make it to the U.S. to perform your job, then I believe you have about up until a month to get that done. So if there's only 2 weeks left on your DS 2019, then it wouldn't make sense for you to come in, right? Because you won't have enough time to work in the U.S. So the sooner you can submit your application, the better for you, because you want that full period. You want the full 4 months to be able to work, make money, and to really enjoy your experience. One thing that Sean mentioned is that you do have a 30-day grace period at the end of the program. So your visa may expire, let's say September 8th, you do technically have until October 8th to return to Jamaica. However, you do need to return before the start of your classes, because that is something that we will ask you when you renew your visa. When did you return? So if you return in November or October, but your classes started in August, that's going to be a problem, and it will call into question whether you are a credible student.
Thank you. And my second question is, on the visa application, you will see applicants is eligible to a 2-year or not. What if you're eligible, your visa is saying that you got the 2-year? How do you?
Are you referring to the 212, the 2-year residency requirement?
No, at the bottom where it says
2-year,
that
not subject to.
is-
Not subject.
Yeah, it says that you're not subject to, So that, it's essentially, so for this particular exchange program, you are not subject to that rule, and that only applies to individuals applying for immigrant visas, which you wouldn't be. So unless you're, immigrating or applying for an H-1B, or you're a teacher, or you're applying for an L visa, which it doesn't apply to you all. So don't worry about that.
Okay. Because I know that last year some students got it.
So those were they camp counselors? Yes. So, but they were traveling to work as camp counselors.
No, they weren't.
So that may have been a mistake. So
Okay.
the only J1 applicants that are subject to the 212E rule, the 2-year residency requirement, are those trainees, interns, teachers, or camp counselors. And it doesn't prevent you from reapplying for a J1 some work travel visa.
Okay.
Again, it only applies to individuals applying for certain categories such as an H-1B or an immigrant visa.
All right, thank you.
There's a question here. For your interview,
Yes.
not only are you allowed, you are encouraged strongly
Yes.
to bring your transcript. Sorry, the question was, are we allowed to bring our transcripts to the interview? And the answer is, you are not only allowed, you are highly encouraged to bring your transcripts. It might be that a consular officer in interviewing you is completely comfortable with what's going on, maybe you've done it before, and they never look at the transcript. But especially if you're a first-timer, just bring your transcript. It's a great way to make sure you have a little more backup if somebody has more questions about your status as a student.
Yeah, so ideally, yes, take it out so that the interview can go by quickly, right? There's hundreds of people interviewing, so if you have all your documents ready to go, your transcript, your severance receipt, your transcript, your severance receipt, and your DS-2019 should already be attached. Like, that's going to be attached to your passport. Have that all ready for the officer, because they may ask, they may not, as Sean said, they may not even ask to see your transcript.
Yes, sir.
But I should note, if you're applying interview waiver, please do attach your transcript. Otherwise, you will be called in for an interview.
All right, so good afternoon. So the question I have is, you mentioned that the end date, the new end date is September 8th for the Labor Day weekend. What if you have a work permit that only goes up to the 1st as of now? Is it possible that it can still be changed to the 8th, or what is the process for that to be changed?
So one option would be to go back to the visa sponsor, now that the dates have changed, and ask them to issue a new DS 2019 with the April the 8th date. But even at a program end date of September 1st, you do still have that 30-day grace period, and you will already be in the U.S. So if you work from there until the 4th and then go on back to Jamaica, you're still going to be fine as far as compliance with the travel requirements. You can check with the sponsor first, and they will tell you, yes, it's the 8th, and hopefully they'll just issue a new 2019, and you can take that with you to the airport. But if they don't, you still do have the time needed to work that Labor Day weekend and come home in compliance.
Yeah. I do want to note, they don't have to issue a new DS 2019. So as long as the SEVIS record is up to date, so your sponsor can make the changes in the system, and it will reflect in the SEVIS in the system. And so when you're going through CBP or Customs and Border Protection, they will see that updated date. So even if you don't get a new DS 2019, that's fine. You can make those arrangements, and if you are able to work, and as he said, you have a 30-day grace period. So if you stay, as long as you're within that 4-month period, because you can only work, your job cannot exceed 4 months. So it has to be 4 months.
Because here's the thing, the reason why I'm asking is because, okay, you said that I'm supposed to just go and ask them to update the service, and that would forego not the 2019. But the thing about it is that on the 2019 it says September 1st. So if I continue to work until the 4th, wouldn't that be void?
Okay. So again, because, so let's say your visa, so I'm assuming you already have your visa, everything has already been adjudicated, you don't need to come back, you already have the visa. So if you're going through CBP, they will see the updated dates, they will see the updated program dates.
Okay. All right.
And that's all that matters. Once they let you in, you're good, right?
All right.
Well, as you might imagine, the answer to that question is generated by someone way above us in the organizational hierarchy, and I can't tell you exactly why. I have some guesses, but I don't want to give you guesses. All I can tell you is that those are the requirements of the program, and if and when they change, that will be great, but those are the rules for now, and those are the rules we have to apply.
Okay, good afternoon again, everyone. Okay, you said that read the transcript. It may or may not be required based on the interviewer, right? Say it is required, you are a returnee for the second time, but your GPA is below 2.0. How do you proceed? Can you bring recommendations, say from a JP, pastor, etc.?
So I think the best way to approach that situation is to come with an explanation. You know, you don't need a letter from your pastor or justice of the peace, but if you can explain why your GPA is lower, you know, what happened during the semester, that should suffice, right? So explain what happened and be honest, forthcoming. And if you have a progress report, for example, let's say you didn't do well last semester, but this semester actually you've passed all your exams and you know you anticipate that you're going to get straight A's or whatever the case may be. So if you are able to get a progress report, but a letter from the pastor, justice of the peace, is not necessary.
Okay, thank you so much. I asked because when I researched a low GPA for the embassy, that's what came up, recommendation letters.
So that wouldn't be from us. As my colleague said, things happen, right? Things happen.
Right.
One of the semesters that I was in college, one of my relatives was really sick, and I spent a lot of time at the hospital before and after class, to the point where I wasn't able to study, to the point where maybe I was a little late on one of my midterm papers, to the point where I really blew the final, right? This is a life experience. We're all coming from circumstances. As long as you are clear about what happened and why, you give yourself your best chance. If you're in that situation and you say, there's no way the embassy is going to take that GPA, I will use whiteout and copy machines, and my GPA is going to go up by 1.5 points through being a doctor document. No, that raises a lot more questions. You'll end up in my world, and you don't want that.
Okay, thank you so much for those responses.
All right, good afternoon. I have two questions. Firstly, what if you're a full-time student, but for some valid reason you are unable to sit the minimum requirement of 12 credits or 4 classes for the first semester, but for the second semester you have exceeded that limit due to some imbalance in your program requirement? Is it the same process of explaining it to the consular officer, or is there anything that's needed? What's the procedure?
Yeah, so you can explain. So essentially, we're assessing you based on your course load at the time of the interview. So if during the previous semester you took 3 classes, that is not as relevant as what you're doing today. So if you're taking 2 classes today because you also have an internship or something that sort of supplements or complements what you're doing, that's fine. But you just need to explain that to the officer. We don't know, we can't guess, so not sharing any information or giving us that context doesn't help you and it doesn't help us.
Thank you. And another question. You mentioned earlier that we have a 30-day grace period of entering and leaving DUIS, depending on our DS19 dates. What do you recommend for us to actually enter as relates to the grace period? Should we enter like a week or 3 days?
Well, there we kind of have to give you a bad government answer, which is it depends. It really does depend. So you have the right to enter the United States as long as it's less than 30 days or less before your program begins. What you can't do during those 30 days is work. So how are you going to support yourself for those extra 30 days by arriving early? If you work, that will be a big difficulty. And we really want to avoid that. I will say in my job as fraud prevention manager, when I see people who are refused entry to the United States, 80 to 85% of them worked without authorization on a prior trip. Don't put yourself in that category. Arrive early enough so that you can be comfortable in arriving at the place where you're going to work and making sure all your details of life are taken care of. But don't put yourself there at a point where you're going to have financial strain, because then you're going to want to work so that you can eat until the program starts. You don't want that. Do not work. You cannot enter any kind of work until you actually start the program. Okay?
Thank you.
We have time for just a couple of more questions.
Hi. I have a situation where I was accepted for a job for an early date, and that's what's on my DS. That's what I applied for with the visa. However, I have to change my start date because of exams. Would that affect my visa application because it's based on the first start date?
No, once again, if you make those changes with the agency and your U.S. sponsor and they update your record, it's completely fine. So CBP will see that, or Customs and Border Patrol, the agent you get will see that in the system, and that is fine. Even if your DS 2019 might be a bit outdated, as long as the electronic record is up to date, you'll be okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I need to just add one more thing. When you're completing the form, guys, I don't know if you do it yourselves or you pay to have it done. Can we get the photos on there? Because it saves a lot of time. We don't want to have to send you back on the road or wherever it is that you go to get your photos. So have them do it electronically. White background, no glasses, and it has to be within 6 months. Okay, not a printed copy of the one you did the last time, like a year or two ago. Within 6 months. It's very important. It allows us to go much faster when we're dealing with you. So have them upload it electronically. You take the hard copy with you when you're coming, just in case it's not done properly. Okay?
That is truly word to the rise. Nikisha and I, we're consular officers. Our colleagues here, they're the ones who take care of all the paperwork before we ever see your case. Make them happy. If you make them happy, then we'll get to see your application much faster. Please, take that advice. Your question.
Okay, so you mentioned about the picture, right? So I have a question in regards to the passport photo. Say the case is that the one that you uploaded electronically online on the form, the hard copy, it has writing at the back, so I know you won't accept that, right? Is it okay if you take another one and bring that?
That's what I'm saying. You're going to take the hard copy with you however. We've been seeing a lot of persons coming with the one that is sealed, like a JP probably endorse it or whatever. We don't need that at all. Just like you take it from the photographer, that's all we need. It can be a different photo from the one that you've uploaded, but the one that you've uploaded has to be within 6 months, and the one that you're taking with you can be the same or a different one that is just as new.
Okay. Then, thank you.
Good afternoon. What are the requirements for a camp counselor, a student camp counselor? I'm not sure if I said it earlier, so I do apologize.
So in that case, you don't need your transcripts and all those other things. There's just a minimum age requirement, which is 18, and you have to be, if you're a college student, the requirement's a bit different than for folks who are not college students. They also need to demonstrate that they're a bona fide youth worker, but in your case, you're young. If you can also demonstrate that you have worked with youth, you should be okay, right? So.
Okay, so I do work with the youth ministry at my church.
Yeah, so you can mention that during the interview.
But I wouldn't have to bring any letter or documentation.
No.
But it would help.
You're a college student.
Yeah.
I mean, it would help. You may not be asked for the letter, but always, you'd rather be over-prepared than under-prepared.
Right. Okay, so just memorize my face. So when I come in, you know. All right?
Further to camp counselors. Remember, when it comes to the J1 Summer Work and Travel Program, my job isn't just detecting fraud, it's also protecting you all. The vast majority of camp counselor programs are perfectly fine. The vast majority of the people who find themselves taken advantage of and mistreated come from the camp counselors. Be careful. Make sure that you have vetted who it is that you were supposed to be working for. This is an area where a lot of people are taken advantage of and find themselves in bad conditions, find themselves with their documents taken, find themselves trapped, essentially, for little pay, certainly less than they contracted for. Be especially careful of the camp counselor program.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing, and you shouldn't be doing menial labor as a camp counselor. So if you are, that is a red flag, and you may want to look for a different opportunity, okay?
Okay. So you were saying about the amount of courses you're doing. Graduate students that are going on the program, some of us are required to do 3 courses maximum. Like myself, I do 3 courses maximum, 3 very, 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 very hard courses. Right, so I'm just making that clear as
And
well.
how many credits are those courses?
3 credits each. So it's 9.
So 9 credits. So again, so that's something that when you interview, you'll just have to explain the
Right.
circumstance, or, explain this context to the officer.
Right.
And have that discussion with them, and they will determine at the time of the interview whether you are qualified or not.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
So thank you all for your questions. Thank you for being here. I think, Mr. Archie, do you have a? Okay.
Thank you so much. Before giving the vote of thanks, though, there is a group of our students online and asking a few questions. One was in relation to, I think, the question that was just asked in relation to graduate students, which somewhat have been clarified. The other, though, for those of our students who qualify for the interview waiver but have the issues in terms of GPA, credit hours issues, is it suggested that they should write a letter explaining their particular scenario? What is suggested in those cases?
So in that case, I think you should just opt for interview, right? So we don't have the time to read every letter you send in, but in that case, instead of going the route of interview waiver, just come in for an interview. Because otherwise, we're just going to call you in for the interview. So this takes out one step, and you just come in and, yeah.
So, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give the team from the U.S. Embassy a round of applause, please. We, on behalf of our students and the UWI administration, we do thank you for taking the time for joining us today to give this informative presentation to our students. It's truly appreciated. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.